George Orwell's 1984 takes place in a dystopian future.
There's one underlying theme in 1984, desensitization.
Desensitization is the act of making someone less sensitive or less likely to feel shock from cruelty, violence, gore, and death. 1984 has two prime examples of desensitization occurring. The first is when Winston is watching a movie in a theater. In the movie, a woman tries to protect a boy in her arms, but a bomb drops on them. And then there was a wonderful shot of a child's arm going up, right up into the air. A helicopter with the camera in its nose must have followed it up, and there was a lot of applause from the party seats.
Orwell 9.
The second is when Mrs. Parsons cannot take her children to see the hanging. The boy then exclaims, "Why can't we go see the hanging?" With the boy's younger sister quickly cheering, "Want to see the hanging! Want to see the hanging!" afterwards.
23.
Orwell wrote that desensitization would be publicly enforced, and, to some extent, he was right. One way that everyone has unknowingly been manipulated into thinking less of violence has slipped under all of our noses this whole time, and it comes in the form of video games. In 1983, around 250 protesters gathered at the spot where the game Custer's Revenge was shown for the first time. They protested against it because there was a scene with a woman strapped to a pole, and the player could rape her for points. Also in 1993, congressional hearings focused on Mortal Kombat because it features realistic blood. The hearings also focused on Doom and Night Trap. In 1997, 3 children were killed in the Health High school shooting. Investigations showed that the shooter played shooter games like Doom. In 1999, 2 students who started shooting at Columbian were fans of violent games, most specifically, Doom. In 2005, U.S. Senator Hillary Clinton advocates for regulations on video game sales after the hot coffee modification in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. In recent years, the concern that desensitization in video games has caused kids to also be more violent keeps building up. This is just like Mrs. Parsons' kids, since now that they have seen violence, they act like they are the ones doing it. Kids can directly be influenced by the violence in video games. As told by Douglas A. Jontill, PhD, after a study where 161 college students were randomly assigned a type of video game to play, those who had played the violent games were more hurtful to other students. After people play first-person shooters, UNC Healthcare pediatrician Jeffrey Ryan, MD, explains that they get agitated when they aren't allowed to do it anymore. Lauren Goldbeck and Alex Pugh of the National Center for Healthcare described that violent video games can also desensitize people to seeing aggressive behavior and decrease pro-social behavior such as helping another person and feeling empathy. What these previous 4 experts have illustrated are terrible acts of the consequences of desensitization, but the worst is yet to come.
There's been one game that's constantly popped up so far.
Doom is essential to a heavily significant topic about desensitization involving it and the military. In the military, 30% of all soldiers suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, also known as PTSD. In 1997, the Army modified the game Doom to a version called Marine Doom. Marine Doom was used for soldiers to play to trigger events that would cause PTSD in advance in a world of fantasy instead of on the battlefield. In short, they wanted to desensitize soldiers to shooting and killing people on war grounds. In 2002, the Army created a game titled America's Army. It was made for training enlistees before boot camp. In the game, the player controls a soldier in an online round in a squad of 2 to 16 people and play against an opposing squad. However, America's Army was also released to the public for free. It was made to recruit teenagers to the Army by making them comfortable with shooting people. It was literal desensitization. In 2004, the Army made another game called Virtual Iraq. The game was in virtual reality and made new recruits go through events that would normally cause PTSD. This game was not released to the public. The main change in gameplay was that it was in virtual reality and provided sense that soldiers would experience in the Army, like burning rubber, body odor, diesel fuel, and gunpowder. There were 6 situations for players to go through that included weather conditions to make it feel like an actual person on the battlefield. 75% of the people who played the game never experienced PTSD due to the game. One could make the argument that the last of those first-person shooters with major controversy was made over a decade ago. Enter Fortnite. Fortnite, a game where the player's objective is to shoot up to 99 other players to achieve the victory royale, has been the focus of many acts of violence committed by kids who played the game. The most notable story has been about a kid headbutting his mom. The story has been talked about on many media outlets. In the articles, Logan Hodge headbutts his mom when she tries to take his game away, giving her a concussion. For the past 2 years, Logan hasn't been to school and logs 12 hours into Fortnite each day. Desensitization has caused violence and also has been used to make people fine with killing other human beings. It's not only in these specific games, either. Some of the most iconic games are all about violence and desensitizing the player, such as Five Nights at Freddy's, Halo, and Metal Gear Solid. More cartoony violence, but still violence nonetheless, are in some of the most innocent-looking games like Super Mario Bros., Super Smash Bros., Mario Kart, Sonic the Hedgehog, Pac-Man, and much more games that the casual gamer plays. Because there have been multiple studies on video games, some of the results have been more positive. In an experiment to see how playing pro-social games affected human behavior, American undergrads were sent to play games like Super Mario Sunshine and Chibi Robo. After playing the games, the undergrads were then given a partner who had to finish 11 puzzles. They were informed that if their partner were to finish 10 of the puzzles, that the partner would get a $10 certificate. The people who had played the pro-social games were significantly more helpful to their partners than others who had not played said games. One of the prime examples of a video game against violence in recent years is Undertale. Undertale is an independent game, better known as an indie game, created by Toby Fox where the player can achieve 3 endings. The best ending is a purely pacifistic ending where you don't kill any quote-unquote enemies. The second ending is a neutral ending where the player both kills and spares his or her opponents. The final ending is the worst. The final ending is a genocide ending. In the ending, the player has to go out of his or her way to purely kill everyone. These actions are not unnoticed by the characters as they talk about how you kill everyone just because you can. The character that remarks on this the most is Sans, who represents morals. The player will not have to fight Sans in the pacifist ending, or, most of the time, in the neutral ending. In the genocide ending, he is the final boss, and is the hardest in the game for a reason. Undertale has affected many of the critics' views on video games. Jake Krajewski noted that the way it directly anticipates gamers' lines of thinking is brilliant. While the story and soundtrack are phenomenal, its ability to turn basic gaming conventions on their heads is what makes the game truly brilliant. Laura Hudson feels that we love stories about heroes because we love to see ourselves as the heroes of our own story. More often than not, we define heroism not by how we rise to meet difficult circumstances, but by how many villains we destroy. Recently, more and more games have popped up that go against killing your enemies and using violence. One example is Kirby's Throw Allies, where you throw hearts at enemies to make them your allies instead of fighting them. Even when you fight bosses, you can throw hearts at most of them to make them friendly and help you. Another example is Yomawari, Midnight Shadows. Towards the end of the game, the main character, the character that you control throughout the game, finds out that her sister, who she has been searching for the whole game, took her own life. Due to this, the game directs the main character to killing herself too. If you do this, you get the bad ending. However, if the player resists to do the same thing that her sister did, there is another chapter in which the game unlocks the good ending. In another game, Doki Doki Literature Club, there are 4 girls that you make relationships with. In Act 2 of the game, the characters start acting strange. It turns out that Monica, one of the 4 characters, has the power to delete the character's files on the actual computer of the player, and that is exactly what she does. But the player can achieve the best ending by doing a series of complicated tasks. On top of Monica deleting everyone, most of the girls can kill themselves in the game. If the player does these tasks without letting the girls kill themselves, the game gifts the player with a direct message from the developer of the game, Dan Salvato, as well as a song. These last 2 examples of games are ones that contradict themselves. To stop violence, it has to include violence. In both of the games, there are characters who hang themselves. Going back to Doki Doki Literature Club, someone with the username of ah_ghost on Reddit commented, Sayori's suicide cemented an image of how the aftermath of my potential suicide would play out. I couldn't put my family through that. I was already doing much better, but this was the final nail in the coffin for any real chance I had of killing myself. This is one of the best examples I could find of how video games can save lives and kill characters without desensitizing it. Another Reddit user with the name of Unholy Knight 32 said that DDLC got me to open up, instead of keeping it to myself, which would have, without a doubt, ended just like Sayori. So I've made a post about how much the game messed me up, particularly how much the image of Sayori's death actually ruined me, and because of how it did so, I've been more openly emotional about it. This is another great example. With noticing how video games have changed in recent years, my prediction for video games in years to come is this. AAA games from companies like Microsoft, Nintendo, and Sony will continue to be produced where you mindlessly kill just for the goal of winning, while indie developers will have death in their game, but will make the player feel emotion and regret for the death, as well as some games where death is completely avoided and makes reference to that fact. There are 3 possible ways that desensitization in video games can be stopped. The first solution is that anyone can protest against including desensitization in video games. One of the easiest ways to do this would be going on change.org and starting a petition about the topic. The second solution is to personally stop playing video games with desensitization in them. The third solution is that developers can do what indie developers like Toby Fox and Dan Salvato are doing, and make deaths count and be important and emotional, or they could not include death at all. In conclusion, video games have included desensitization since the height of their popularity. While the desensitization in video games is not as present and enforced as it is in 1984, desensitization is still present. However, recent video games and their developers have strayed away from including meaningless violence, and instead make the deaths have impact and cause emotion. As stated by Kevin LaRose, an axe can be used to split logs for a fire to keep people warm on a cold day, or it can be used as a weapon. Likewise, video games can have both positive and negative effects. Content matters, and games are excellent teachers.